Hey there. Tonight, we're not visiting royalty or grand battles. There are no plagues, no cathedrals, no sword fights or screaming kings. Tonight we're descending into the bowels of history, literally. You're going to be a servant. In a Victorian mansion. Not one of the fancy, upstairs ones in silk gloves and powdered wigs. No, you're one of the many faceless, backbending souls working downstairs. A world below the marble and mahogany. A life of call bells, coal dust, stiff uniforms, and endless boots to polish. So get comfortable. Because tonight, you're in service. And your day starts long before anyone upstairs opens their eyes. It's 4:30 in the morning. The house is cold. The kind of cold that creeps into your bones and sets up permanent residence. The kind of cold that tells you, deep down, that the sun isn't coming up for a while, and neither is your hope. You're in a narrow bed, scratchy wool blanket, straw mattress, one pillow, flat as yesterday's bread. There's no fire in your room. Why would there be? You're not important enough for warmth. You share this room with 2 other servants. They're asleep, or pretending to be. You've got a few minutes to dress. The uniform is standard. Stiff black fabric, buttoned tight to the neck. If you're a maid, there's a white apron that you ironed the night before, until your arms nearly fell off. If you're a footman, it's a suit, pressed, clean, and never ever wrinkled. There's no time to be fashionable. Your job is to blend in, not stand out. Your boots go on cold and damp. You didn't get time to dry them properly after yesterday's rain. But that's your problem. No one's asking. No one's waiting. There's work to be done. First task, light the fires. You move through the house like a ghost, tiptoeing past creaking floorboards and drafty corridors. Every room must be warm before the family stirs. That means laying kindling, arranging coals, striking matches with half-frozen fingers. If the fire doesn't catch quickly, you blow on it until your cheeks sting. And if it smokes instead of burns, well, you'd better open a window fast and hope the smell clears before your mistress notices. Or doesn't. And then just glares at you over her teacup until you wish you could fall through the floor. There are 36 fireplaces in the house. You light 18. The rest are covered by the other underservants if they showed up on time, which they usually do, because lateness is not an option, ever. Your hands are black with soot. You've already ruined your cuffs. No one cares. Now, it's time to polish the silver. You sit in the scullery, a dim room that always smells vaguely of grease, boiled cabbage, and something metallic. The silver lives in a locked cabinet. You don't have the key. The butler does. He unlocks it for you every morning and stands behind you as you work, watching, not speaking, just watching. You rub each spoon with paste and cloth, turning it until your fingers ache. Knives, forks, ladles, serving trays, teapots. Everything must shine. Nothing can show a fingerprint. The family doesn't notice when it's clean. They only notice when it's not. By the time you've finished, your back is sore, your nose is running, and you haven't had breakfast. But don't worry. You won't get food for another hour. Next stop, boots. The master's boots are made of fine leather. Expensive. Delicate. They must gleam like they've just come from the shoemaker. You clean them with a horsehair brush, apply polish in small circles, and buff with a cloth until you can see your reflection, or more accurately, your own exhaustion, staring back at you. There are 12 pairs to polish. Then the boys' shoes. Then the ladies' delicate ankle boots. If you scuff anything, you're done. 1 smudge can mean a scolding. 2, and you're out of work. Servants are replaceable. Always remember that. Now it's breakfast. Not for you. For the family. The cook has been up since 5 a.m., preparing porridge, toast, eggs, kippers, tea, and coffee. The dining room must be set precisely. Silverware aligned, tablecloth without a wrinkle, glasses arranged in size order. You help plate the food in the kitchen, hands moving quickly but silently. Then you carry it up, through the back stairs, through the servant's door, through the hush of the upper house where footsteps are muffled by Turkish carpets. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't look anyone in the eye unless you're the butler. You stand behind chairs like living statues. Ready. Always ready. If you're lucky, you can return downstairs before the tea goes cold. Finally, you eat. The servant's breakfast is practical. Bread, butter, weak tea. Maybe porridge if there's enough left. You eat in the servants' hall, a long table in a room with low ceilings and no windows. The housekeeper sits at the head. She controls everything. If you speak out of turn, she will silence you with a look. Her eyes are sharper than her scissors. After breakfast, the real work begins. If you're a maid, it's bed making, sweeping, dusting, laundering, scrubbing chamber pots, and re-ironing whatever creased overnight. You'll change bed linens carefully. No wrinkles. No visible seams. You fluff pillows by hand and shake out feather beds in silence, even when the feathers escape and stick to your face. If you're a footman, it's more stairs. More silver to polish. More things to carry. You help the butler bring in coal, prepare the dining room, greet the tradesmen, and answer the front door with a bow. Every task is precise. Every gesture practiced. You don't improvise. You obey. And throughout it all, there's the bell system. A tangle of wires snakes behind the walls of the house, connected to small brass bells in the servants' hall. Each is labeled with a room name: drawing room, master's study, nursery. When someone upstairs pulls a cord, the corresponding bell rings. You listen. You memorize the tone. You respond instantly. If a bell rings and no one answers in under 30 seconds, there will be words, sharp ones. And so the bells ring all day. A constant background hum of need. You become an extension of the house itself. A moving part. A whisper with legs. The family rarely uses your name. They don't need to. You're the girl. You're the boy. You're fetch me this and take this away. Your background. Wallpaper with a heartbeat. And yet in the servants' quarters, there's a rhythm. A strange kind of order. A hierarchy more complex than anything upstairs. The butler is king. The housekeeper is queen. The cook is somewhere between priest and tyrant. You at the bottom are a pawn. But even pawns know how to move. Carefully. Strategically. If you want to survive in service, you learn 3 things fast. Speak little. Listen always. Never show fatigue. Respect the house, even when it disrespects you. Because this house owns your hours, your silence, your fingers, your footsteps. It owns your back bent over beds. Your knees scrubbing floors. Your hands chapped from lye and coal. And in return, it gives you something very small: a roof, a crust of bread, a uniform, a place in the shadow of wealth, never in the light of it. And so the day continues. Your fingers crack from cold. Your apron smells faintly of onions and coal smoke. Your feet are swollen, but you press on, because that's what you do. That's what servants do. And you're just getting started. So, you're about halfway through your day now. At least you hope you are. You haven't seen a clock in hours, and even if you had, it wouldn't matter. Time in a Victorian mansion doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the house, the family, the ever-ticking rhythm of upper-class routine. Your job is to move silently between it all, smoothing the cracks no one's allowed to see. The servant's world isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in tasks. And there are always more tasks. You've just finished cleaning the library. That sounds nice, doesn't it? A quiet room, maybe a little sunlight through the high windows, the scent of books and polished wood. That would be true if you had time to notice it. But you don't. You're too busy dusting every shelf, every book, every little porcelain figurine the lady of the house collects but never looks at. If you knock one over, there's no forgiveness. Just disappointment. And disappointment in this house is lethal. You've polished the windows, straightened the drapes, checked the gas sconces, and swept the hearth. You work quickly but carefully, because the master sometimes visits the library in the afternoon. If it smells like last night's coal smoke, or if there's a streak on the glass, you'll hear about it. You'll hear about it from the butler, who heard about it from the housekeeper, who heard about it from the master, who didn't say it out loud, just made a face. That's how things work here. Hierarchy. Silence. Disapproval passed like folded letters. Now it's time to prepare the drawing room. The ladies are taking tea at 4. So you go upstairs again. Not the front staircase, of course. That's reserved for the family and their guests. You take the servant stairs, steep and narrow, built more for haste than comfort. The walls are close. The wallpaper changes. The air gets warmer. It always does upstairs. Heat rises, but so does luxury. You walk past velvet curtains, oil paintings, and expensive carpets. You try not to let your boots scuff them. Not even a whisper of sound. You don't belong here, not really. Your presence is tolerated, not welcomed. You are invisible until you aren't. And if you are noticed, it's usually because something's wrong. In the drawing room, you set the tea table with military precision. Fine china. Silver sugar tongs. Linen napkins folded just so. The sandwiches must be tiny, triangular, and stacked like architectural models. Cucumber, watercress, smoked salmon if there was some left from luncheon. You pour the tea without spilling, holding the pot just high enough to be graceful, but low enough not to splash. It's a delicate art. You've practiced it more than some violinists practice scales. The ladies of the house enter. You step back. They don't greet you. They never do. You are part of the furniture. A teapot with legs. They speak in soft, airy tones. The eldest talks about lace patterns. The youngest complains that the carriage was drafty. You don't react. You're not meant to. But you notice everything. You notice that the lady's left glove is torn at the fingertip. That the girl's brooch is missing today. That one of them is unusually quiet. That there are letters on the side table, opened and hastily tucked away. You are a silent observer in a play that never stops. Downstairs again. There's no such thing as a break. Not really. Maybe a cup of tea if you're quick. Maybe a crust of bread if the scullery maid remembered to save some. But don't linger. Don't sit too long. Don't fall asleep even a little. The bells will ring again soon, and you'll be expected to move like you've been waiting your whole life for that sound. There's laundry to do. Laundry in the Victorian age is not a gentle matter. There's no machine. No warm, perfumed detergent. There's soap, but it's harsh and caustic. There's boiling water, wooden tubs, a washboard that eats your knuckles, and a mangle to squeeze the clothes dry. You haul buckets from the pump and hope the fire stays hot. You scrub until your arms ache. Shirts. So many shirts. Starch collars are the worst. They must be stiff enough to stand upright, but not so stiff that they break. The master goes through at least one a day. More if he's dining out. And don't even start on the petticoats. You're surrounded by linen, steam, and lye. Your hands are red and raw. Your apron is soaked. The room is thick with heat and wet cloth. Someone is coughing in the corner. You ignore it. You keep working. There's ironing next. Each garment must be pressed with a heavy iron that's been sitting on the stove. You test it with a wet finger, flinch, and press carefully. One burn mark, and the entire item must be laundered again. You press. Fold. Stack. The linen closet upstairs is a monument to perfection. It looks like no one has ever touched it. That's the point. You've been awake for 12 hours. You've climbed more stairs than you can count. You've answered 7 bells, cleaned 4 hearths, served 2 meals, and still your work isn't done. Because now comes dinner. Dinner in the mansion is a performance. A ritual. The butler is the conductor. You the orchestra. The table must be set just so. Cutlery in perfect order. Wine glasses gleaming. Centerpieces arranged by the mistress herself, which means you don't touch them, unless she decides they look wrong, in which case you must touch them instantly and perfectly. The kitchen is chaos. The cook is bellowing. The The scullery maid is scrubbing pans with frantic energy. Someone dropped a tureen. There's shouting and then silence and then more shouting. You carry food to the dining room. You wait in the hallway. You listen to the forks and laughter. You wait for the bell to ring again. You clear plates, bring more wine, fetch sauces you didn't know existed. By the time the family finishes dessert, you haven't sat down in nearly 14 hours. But now comes the best part of your day. You get to eat their leftovers. The servant's dinner is what's left from above. Stewed vegetables, bones stripped of meat, a few ladles of gravy. It's hot at least, and filling, if not entirely pleasant. You eat in silence or low murmur, too tired to speak. The footman next to you has a bruise on his wrist. The maid across the table has fallen asleep with a spoon in her hand. You finish quickly, because now it's time to turn down the beds. Upstairs again. You move like a shadow. You check every fireplace, every curtain, every window latch. You pull back the sheets. You fluff the pillows. You place the slippers just right. You fold the nightdress at the foot of the bed. You leave everything as though no one ever touched it. You step back. You disappear. When the family retires, so do you. Sort of. You return to your attic or your basement room. You wash your hands in a chipped basin. The water is cold. Always cold. You peel off your uniform, your stiff collar, your aching boots. You lie on your narrow bed. You pull the blanket over your shoulders. And for a few hours you sleep. But even in sleep you're not free. You dream of bells, of creaking staircases, of boots that never shine enough, and beds that never stay made. You dream of a life upstairs. And then you wake, and do it all again. It's another day. Another turn of the crank. Another sunrise you don't see because you're already working in the basement by the time the first light hits the stained glass windows upstairs. The mansion is still for now. But below stairs, the machinery is already humming. Every Victorian mansion runs on two systems. One is visible, polished, elegant, slow-moving. That's the family. The drawing rooms, the parlors, the genteel conversations, the gleaming silver teapots on linen-clad tables. That's the illusion. The other is invisible. That's you. And today, we're taking a closer look at the people behind the illusion. The hierarchy, the structure, the unspoken laws of life below stairs. Because being a servant isn't just about doing chores. It's about knowing exactly where you stand. Let's start at the top of your world, the butler. He is the undisputed king of downstairs. He wears a tailcoat, walks with careful precision, and speaks in low tones that carry more weight than shouting ever could. He is in charge of the wine cellar, the silver, the pantry, the footmen, the front door, and the dignity of the household. He does not smile. Not really. If you ever see him show emotion, it's probably disappointment, possibly loathing, maybe both. The butler doesn't work. He oversees, which is a kind of work just smoother, cleaner. His hands are rarely dirty, but his mind is always ticking. He knows what time the soup was served last Tuesday, and what kind of sherry the master prefers when it's raining. Beneath him, you have the under-butler, if the house is big enough to afford one. He's the assistant to authority, the deputy of dignity. He does much of the running that the butler pretends not to have to do. Then there are the footmen. You might be one. If you are, your duties are endless, but ceremonial. You open doors, announce guests, carry trays, help the gentlemen into their coats, and stand very still for very long periods of time. You're hired partly for your appearance. Tall, clean-shaven, symmetrical. You are ornamental. An expensive lamp in trousers. Footmen polish. Footmen carry. Footmen serve. But never with flair. You are background. Pleasant, efficient background. If you're lucky, you might become the first footman, the top of the ornamental ladder. He helps serve dinner. Polishes the silver that the butler pretends to have polished himself. He gets paid slightly more. Not enough to make a difference, but enough to matter to those below him. Now shift your eyes across the hallway to the housekeeper. She is the queen of domestic order. She holds the keys. Quite literally. The large ring of keys at her waist is symbolic and practical. They open cupboards, linen closets, pantries, and sometimes locked trunks with things you're not supposed to look at. She manages the maids. She hires and fires. She keeps a ledger with neat handwriting and cold judgments. Don't cross her. Ever. Then comes the cook. And in some houses, she's as powerful as the housekeeper. Maybe more. She runs the kitchen like a warship. She screams. She curses. She throws things, but with startling accuracy. Her meals must be perfect, but more than that, they must be on time. Hot food waits for no one. Not even nobility. She commands the kitchen maids, the scullery maids, and the endless stream of ingredients being peeled, chopped, roasted, and boiled. The smell of her domain is inescapable, on your clothes, your hands, your hair. It follows you like a second shadow. You might think the scullery maid has it the worst, and you'd be right. She's the lowest of the low. She washes every pot, every pan, every sticky spoon. Her fingers are perpetually red and wrinkled. She wakes before everyone else and sleeps long after the last knife has been scraped clean. She speaks rarely, mostly in nods and tired glances. Her name is usually forgotten, even by the other servants. But it's the ladies' maids and the valets who hold a strange power. They aren't the highest ranked, but they are the most trusted. They know things. A lady's maid is responsible for the mistress's wardrobe, her hair, her jewelry, her appearance. She wakes her, dresses her, brushes her hair 200 times if asked. She sees her naked, emotionally and otherwise. She listens to secrets, holds handkerchiefs while the mistress cries, pretends not to notice the scathing things said about the cook, the master, or the neighbors. The valet performs the same duties for the master, helps him shave, lays out his clothes, polishes his boots, removes lint, carries out tasks that look simple but are loaded with subtext. The valet might know more about the master's affairs than the master's own wife. He won't say a word, but he knows. And then there are the nursemaids, the governess, and the children's maids. They live in a strange twilight between upstairs and downstairs. The governess is educated, refined, and poor, too well-bred to dine with the servants, not well-born enough to join the family. She exists in between, teaching Latin to sulking boys and embroidery to girls who already know how to be pretty. It is a lonely position, one without a place. Now, if you're a maid of all work, you're everywhere. You fill the cracks. You clean, cook, fetch, carry, and somehow still find time to sweep the steps. You are the glue, the grease, the unseen force that keeps the house upright and functional. You don't specialize. You survive. And always, there's the hall boy and the between maid. They are younger, often children. Their job is to do whatever no one else wants to do. Empty slop buckets, clean boots, run errands, scrub the servants' hall after everyone else has gone to bed. If they do well, they might be promoted. If not, they're forgotten. So there it is. The chain of command. From the lord of the cellar to the boy who cleans the chamber pots. A delicate ecosystem of power and quiet suffering. Everyone watches the person above them. Everyone avoids the wrath of those below. You learn quickly. You keep your head down. You do your job. Because jobs are scarce. Because one wrong word can mean a ruined reference. Because in this house, your future depends not just on hard work, but on being invisible in the right ways and visible in the right moments. You are not a person. You are a role. And if you play it well, you might, just might, survive another year. You wake to the sound of footsteps overhead. Not the bells this time, but the faint patter of slippers on hardwood floors. The lady of the house is awake. It's not yet 6 in the morning. You're already dressed, already halfway through laying fires in the guest rooms. The coals are stubborn this morning, and the air feels like it's holding its breath. Fog outside. Your breath fogs too, white and quick in the cold corridors. There is no such thing as a quiet day in service. Even quiet days are filled with motion, especially when it comes to cleaning. Cleaning is a religion in a Victorian mansion, and you, humble servant, are its devout follower. You begin with the floors. Every floorboard must be dusted, swept, and scrubbed. Not just the ones you can see. The ones under the furniture, too. The dining table weighs as much as a cow, but it must be moved. Every leg, every joint. Because the master might crouch and inspect it for dust, even though he hasn't done so in 6 years. You sweep the carpet with a stiff broom. There's no vacuum. Just strength, rhythm, and patience. And rugs must be beaten. You carry them outside, hang them on the line, and thrash them with a wooden paddle until your arms shake. Clouds of dust rise like ghosts. You sneeze. You don't stop. Now the curtains. Massive velvet ones in the drawing room. Delicate lace in the morning room. The velvet must be brushed, gently. The lace must be hand-washed, starched, and pinned out to dry on boards. It takes hours. You get 20 minutes. Mirrors are next. If there's even one streak left when the sun hits them just right, the mistress will notice. She always notices. You polish with vinegar and a soft cloth. The glass stares back at you, silently judging your technique. You move to the bedrooms. The beds have already been made, but now it's time for the details. Linen straightened. Pillows fluffed again. You replace the water in the wash basins, empty the chamber pots, quickly and with the lid down, and you scrub the marble tops of the washstands. Then there's the bath. In a wealthy household, some bedrooms may have a bathing setup. It's not plumbing, not yet. There's a copper tub, a stand for soap, a jug of hot water. You carry the water up from the scullery in large cans, one at a time. You don't spill it. You don't splash the rug. You stand waiting as the lady bathes behind a screen. You hand her the towel when she's done. You never ever look. Now dusting. Dust is the enemy. The endless enemy. Every book, every knick-knack, every framed portrait, every fringe of every lampshade must be dusted daily. There's a brass cornice in the hallway that hasn't been touched by human hands since 1862. You climb up and dust it anyway. Because if you don't, someone will notice. Or won't notice. It doesn't matter. You must do it anyway. Polishing is next. Everything must gleam. Brass doorknobs. Silver candlesticks. The grandfather clock pendulum. The banister. The fenders around every hearth. Even the houseplants are cleaned. You wipe the leaves with a damp cloth. The ficus doesn't thank you. It's nearing luncheon time now. You're back in the kitchen helping plate dishes. No one sees your hands tremble from fatigue. You arrange salad leaves with tweezers. You wipe the edges of plates with napkins. You carry everything on heavy silver trays up the servants' stairs, past the warm scent of beeswax and overcooked cabbage. Upstairs, the family gathers for luncheon. It's not breakfast. It's not dinner. It's the polite meal. The meal where things are discussed, appointments are made, and servants are noticed only if something goes wrong. You return to the scullery to clean. Every plate, every fork, every dripping ladle, hot water, harsh soap, rags worn thin. You can hear the butler arguing with the footmen about wine, the cook shouting something about aspic. Someone dropped a tureen. Again. Back in the drawing room, it's quiet. The ladies are embroidering. You vacuum their silence with your motion. You refill the coal scuttle. You brush the hearth. You pretend not to hear them speak about the guest arriving tomorrow, or the footman they found unsuitable and quietly dismissed last week. You're part of the furniture, but furniture with ears. In the nursery, it's another story. The children are awake, which means the nursemaid is awake, which means the entire household is slightly more on edge. Children, in theory, are kept at arm's length, seen and not heard. But in practice, they're always underfoot. You help carry toys, retrieve lost dolls, wipe a snotty nose, straighten a jumper. You aren't supposed to interact with the children much, but they know your name. They always know the names of the nice servants, and they like to test what they can get away with. They ask questions. Why your apron is always dirty. Why you wear the same shoes. Why you live in the attic. You smile. You answer simply. You don't tell them you had blisters from those shoes 3 weeks ago that are only just healing. You don't say anything about the draft in the attic that wakes you up every night. You just keep working. Mid-afternoon, there's a minor emergency. The lady's dog, one of those yappy, irritable creatures with hair more styled than your own, has had an accident on the Turkish rug in the morning room. You're called. You fetch a pail. You clean it. The lady sighs. So tiresome, she says. You agree. Yes, madam. You are invisible again. As dinner approaches, everything tightens. The drawing room is arranged again. The wine is decanted. The menus are reviewed, reheated, reassembled. The cook is in full command mode now. The maids are double-checking the guest rooms. The footmen are lint-trolling each other's coats. And you're quietly replacing candles, fluffing cushions, sprinkling just enough lavender water in the hallway to make the house smell inviting, but not suspiciously clean. Dinner is served. You carry trays. You retrieve plates. You keep your back straight. The family is speaking French. You don't understand it, but you know when they're displeased. You feel it in your bones. Finally, late in the evening, the guests depart. The lady yawns. The master grunts something about the bishop being tiresome. You help the valet with the master's boots. You help the lady's maid unpin her mistress's hair. You turn down the bed. Then you go downstairs, where you mop the floors one last time before bed. It is now after midnight. You have been working since before dawn. You eat the crust of a roll. You scrape gravy from a chipped plate and call it supper. You sit for a moment, just long enough for your legs to forget how to be legs. Then you crawl into bed, curl under your wool blanket, and fall asleep before you finish your first thought. You don't dream. You're too tired. The dream comes later, and in it, the bell is ringing again. It starts again before sunrise. There's a peculiar kind of silence in a Victorian mansion just before the day begins. Not peaceful silence. It's the silence of tension, of expectations, of work coiled and waiting to spring. And at the center of that tension is something deceptively simple. The bell board, a wooden panel mounted on the wall of the servants' hall. Dozens of tiny brass bells hang from it in neat rows, each one with a label. Drawing room, morning room, nursery, master's dressing room, blue guest bedroom. Each bell is connected by a wire, thin, twitching, and alive, to a cord somewhere upstairs. When someone in the house pulls the cord, any cord, a bell rings. A tiny metallic tinkle. If you're a guest, you might find it charming. If you're a servant, you hear it in your dreams. Every servant knows the sound of each bell. Not just which room it belongs to, but its personality. The way the drawing room bell rattles in 2 short bursts when the lady is calling. The hesitant jingle of the nursery bell when one of the children pulls it. The furious clanging of the master's study when he wants his papers and wants them now. You don't run when a bell rings. You walk quickly, with purpose. Never panic. Panic is undignified. Panic is noticed. You answer the bell. You bow. You wait for instructions. Then you disappear. You might be asked to bring tea, or to fetch the dog, or to carry a note to the stable boy, or to remind the governess that the mistress is expecting her at 10:30. Sometimes the request is baffling. Where is my lavender ribbon? The lady demands. You don't know. You never saw a lavender ribbon. But you find one anyway. You search every drawer, every cabinet, every sewing box. You wake the lady's maid and ask if she knows. She sighs, finds the ribbon in a coat pocket. You return with it just in time. The lady doesn't say thank you. She rarely does. This is the language of service. Unspoken requests. Immediate solutions. No credit. Occasionally, someone pulls the bell by accident. The bell rings. You go. The room is empty. You wait. You listen. Then you leave. You don't mention it. You don't laugh. Bells are not funny. There's another kind of bell. The front door bell. When it rings, the footman answers. He checks his gloves first, smooths his waistcoat, opens the door with just the right expression, attentive but not eager. It might be the postman. It might be a tradesman. It might be a guest arriving early, which is never good. Nothing throws off a Victorian household like someone arriving, unannounced. Sometimes it's a child bringing a message, covered in soot, looking like they've been running for miles. You take the letter. You thank them. You don't offer food. That's not allowed. If it's a tradesman, you log the delivery, check the items, sign the ledger. The butler will inspect it later. If there's even one bruised apple or chipped china plate, there will be a complaint written, on heavy cream paper, in ink that smells of formality and fury. The bell rings again. This time it's the morning room. The lady wants tea. You boil water, warm the pot, choose the Darjeeling, arrange the tray, linen napkin, sugar bowl, milk jug, silver spoon turned just so. You walk upstairs, carefully, slowly. You've done this 100 times. Still, your hands shake a little. One slip of the tray and your week is ruined. You enter. She's staring at the window, wearing her reading spectacles. She doesn't turn. You set the tray down. You pour the tea. You ask, "Will that be all, madam?" She nods without looking. You leave. Downstairs, someone is ironing napkins. The air smells like steam and lavender. The housekeeper is inspecting the silver. The cook is snapping at the kitchen maid for chopping too slowly. The scullery maid is elbow deep in water, scrubbing a roasting pan that looks like it survived a cannon blast. The bell rings again. It's the schoolroom. You walk faster. Inside, the governess is pale. One of the boys has climbed onto a cabinet. The girl is crying about a doll's missing shoe. You help. Calmly. Quietly. You find the shoe. You fetch a step stool. You hand the governess a damp cloth for her brow. You don't speak unless spoken to. Then you go. Sometimes a bell rings in the middle of the night. It's rare, but it happens. When it does, the sound cuts like a knife through sleep. You wake. Pull on your boots. Grab your apron. You answer. It might be the master with a headache, or the lady with a spilled glass, or one of the children frightened by a dream. You don't ask why. You just bring water. You clean the mess. You calm the child. Then you return to bed and lie very still, trying to remember where you left off in your own dream before it was interrupted. Servants don't own time. They borrow it. Even their sleep belongs to the house. So much of life in a mansion is dictated by glances and gestures. You learn to read them like scripture. A raised eyebrow from the housekeeper means that corner was not dusted. A slight cough from the butler means adjust the wine glasses. A twitch of the mistress's mouth means this soup is too hot. And occasionally, very occasionally, a glance of approval, a nod, a murmur, a "that will be all." These are not praise. They are not rewards, but they are enough. They mean you're still in favor, still useful, still safe. In the Victorian mansion, bells are not just devices. They are the nervous system of the house. They carry messages, demands, warnings, expectations, and you. You are the response. Quick, silent, efficient. The bell rings again. You don't even flinch anymore. Food. You think about it often. Not because you're starving, though you often are, but because food dominates your life as a servant in a Victorian mansion. Not the eating of it. No, that's a luxury reserved for those upstairs. For you, food is work. Endless, grinding, repetitive, greasy work. Let's start with breakfast. Upstairs, breakfast is served between 8 and 9 a.m. Not before, not after. It's a meal of quiet expectations and very specific preferences. The master likes his eggs poached, but only if the yolks are still running. The lady wants thin toast, not too crisp, with marmalade that hasn't come from the bottom of the jar. The children, if they're eating in the nursery, want porridge with brown sugar and milk, but only a little milk, and not warm, and certainly not hot. Downstairs, your breakfast is eaten standing up, quickly, and usually cold. A slice of bread, maybe a bit of dripping or a smear of jam, if it hasn't all been used up. The tea is lukewarm, served in a dented tin mug. You drink fast. You return to work. Because while breakfast is being served upstairs, luncheon must be prepared. This is the light midday meal. The illusion of ease. Cold meats, pies, aspic, a salad of sorts. The kind of food that takes hours to prepare and seconds to criticize. Gelid calf's foot. Tongue sliced so thin it practically disappears. A boiled chicken presented with parsley tucked decoratively into places no parsley wants to be. You help plate the dishes in the kitchen. You don't taste them. You might never know what they taste like. The cook does, of course. She samples everything. She has to. But not too much. Too much and the lady will notice. Cook seems to be broadening, she once said. You heard. You weren't meant to. The food is carried up on heavy silver trays. The handles are polished to a shine. The plates are warmed. The napkins are folded into shapes so complex they require diagrams. You bring the food. You serve the food. You stand silently by the door as it's consumed. Then you bring it all back. Now comes the cleaning. Washing up after luncheon is its own ordeal. There's no dish soap, not really. Just hot water, harsh soap flakes, and elbow grease. You scrub every plate, every fork, every spoon. The knives are wiped separately. They're not submerged. That's not done. The crystal glasses are cleaned last. Carefully. You polish them with a cloth, so thin it's practically imaginary. You hold each one up to the light to check for smudges. You pray none break. One broken wine glass is a week's wages, and you're the one who pays. In between, you might get your own lunch. It's called dinner for the servants. It's served around midday. And served is generous. It's whatever's left. Bits of stew. Boiled potatoes that have seen better centuries. Cold cabbage. Bread that could double as a doorstop. Sometimes there's meat. You're never sure what animal it came from, and it's best not to ask. Still, it's food. And it's warm. You eat quickly. Always quickly. You never know when you'll be called back. Then tea. The family takes tea at 4 o'clock. Without fail. The mistress invites guests. Ladies in gloves and large hats sit and sip and murmur about lace and disappointments. You prepare the trays. Tea from Ceylon or India. The right pot for the right blend. The milk must be poured second, not first. Or is it first today? You can't remember. The rules change depending on who's visiting. There are sandwiches. Cucumber. Egg and cress. Tiny things cut precisely. No crusts. Always triangles. The cook curses under her breath as she slices them. You arrange them on china with floral edges. Then you add the cakes. The fruit cake that's more fruit than cake. The sponge that must be soft but not crumbly. The biscuits arranged in a perfect circle, like they were summoned by Saiyans. You carry it all upstairs, trying not to trip. The ladies don't look at you as they eat. You return to the kitchen. Wipe your hands. Check the roast. Because now it's time for dinner. This is the real performance. The main event. The table must be perfect. Linen pressed. Candles trimmed. Glasses aligned. The butler oversees everything. You are background noise. Movement without sound. There are multiple courses. Soup first. Always soup. Then fish. Then meat. Then something gelid. Then dessert. Then cheese. Then coffee. Each course has its own plates, utensils, and serving style. The butler announces each one like a theater director. The consomme, the sole à la Normand, the saddle of lamb. You carry the food in. Remove the dishes. Bring the wine. Open bottles silently. Watch for empty glasses. You don't eat any of it. You don't even breathe near it. When dinner ends, it's not over. Now comes supper. A light meal served late. If the family is entertaining or feeling peckish, you prepare it again. Sandwiches, soup, a little cold tongue, biscuits, a glass of port. You bring it to the drawing room on a tray. Place it on a side table. You bow. You leave. At last, you eat again. Your supper, sometimes called high tea among the staff, is leftovers, tea, maybe cold meat if there's any. Bread that's slightly less stale than this morning's. It's better than nothing, but only just. You eat in the servants' hall. A long table, uncomfortable chairs, a few flickering lamps. The housekeeper at one end, the butler at the other. A kind of odd domestic parliament. No one talks too much. There's a silence in the air, thick as the pudding. The footman stares at his blistered hands. The scullery maid has fallen asleep on her plate. You finish eating. Wipe your mouth. Clear your plate. Then, because there is always more, you go back to the kitchen and clean again. Food is constant, but it's never yours. You prepare meals you'll never taste. Wash plates you'll never touch upstairs. Set tables you'll never sit at. You know the menu better than the family does. You've memorized every ingredient. You've chopped them, peeled them, rolled them in breadcrumbs and basted them in sauces. But they're not for you. You eat in the shadows. And tomorrow you'll cook it all again. If you were to ask a servant in a Victorian mansion when their next day off is, they might laugh, or they might stare at you blankly, because the concept of a day off, as you understand it, doesn't exist here. Not really. There is no weekend, no Sunday brunch, no bank holidays curled under blankets, no summer vacation. The mansion never sleeps, and if the mansion never sleeps, neither do you. Technically, some servants are granted a half-day off once a week, but only some, and only if their duties are completed, and only if nothing unexpected happens, like a guest arriving, a child falling ill, or the dog going missing again. Even when you're off, you're not off. You're still in uniform. You're still in the building. You're still listening for the bell, because it might ring, and if it rings, you answer it. That's the rule. So what do you do on your half-day, if you're lucky enough to get one? You might go outside. You walk into the village. You run errands. Post a letter for the cook. Pick up ribbons for the lady's maid. Buy soap. Visit your mother, if she's within walking distance. Or your sister. Or someone you haven't seen in months, but who remembers your face before it was lined with tiredness. You don't walk slowly. You don't loiter. Time off is counted in minutes. Squander them, and you'll lose the next opportunity entirely. Sometimes you take your tea with another servant. You speak in low tones. Share gossip. Swap stories from different households. What Lady So-and-so threw across the drawing room. What Lord What's-His-Name keeps in his study after hours. Who was dismissed and why. But you speak quietly, because walls have ears. And servants who speak too freely often find themselves looking for work. When you return from your half-day, you walk in through the back entrance. Always. You hang your coat on the same peg. You check your appearance. You return to the kitchen, or the scullery, or the linen room, and you pick up where you left off, as if you never left at all. And most days you don't. Most days you don't go farther than the end of the hallway, because the house is your world. It is your prison, and your home, and your employer, and your stage. You live here. You work here. You sleep here. In your tiny room. Let's talk about that room. If you're lucky, it's in the attic. If you're not, it's in the basement. Either way, it's not large. It fits a bed, a basin, and a wooden chest for your things. You don't have many things. a comb, a spare pair of stockings, a ribbon for your hair, a photograph tucked into a book, maybe a letter, folded and unfolded so many times the creases feel permanent. You keep it hidden. There are no locks, no privacy. The window, if there is one, is small. Sometimes it sticks. Sometimes it rattles in the wind. Sometimes it lets in a sliver of moonlight that lands on your face just right and makes you remember the sky. The walls are thin. You hear the others breathe. You hear someone crying softly in the night. You never ask why, because you understand. Some days are harder than others. Some weeks stretch like rope across the edge of your endurance. The hours pile on. Your legs grow weak. Your hands crack open. Your eyes sting with lack of sleep. But you don't stop, because no one else will do it for you. There are moments, though, brief stolen moments, where time pauses. Like when you pass through the conservatory in the early morning and catch the scent of jasmine. Or when the baby in the nursery wraps a hand around your finger and giggles. Or when the music room is empty and you stand very still in the doorway, just listening to the silence. Or when the lady just once says thank you. It's so rare that it echoes in your mind for days. You don't live for those moments, but you remember them. They're not enough to balance the weight of everything else, but they exist. You exist, even if no one says your name. Because downstairs, names are a privilege. Sometimes you're just girl. Sometimes you. Sometimes not even that. When you are spoken to, it's formal. Is that the silver cloth? Fetch the other tray. She's late again. No one asks how you're feeling. No one asks what you think. Your opinions, your dreams, your hopes are left outside the mansion's door, never to be seen again. But they're still there, somewhere. You dream of someday having your own house. Not a mansion, just a cottage. A fire you light for yourself. A meal you cook and then eat while sitting down. A room that locks. A door that opens to no one but those you invite. You dream of wearing your own clothes. Not a uniform. Something soft. Something yours. You dream of sleeping past 6. And sometimes you allow yourself to imagine leaving this life. Marrying perhaps. Setting up a little shop. Moving to a town where no one knows you were once the girl who cleaned chamber pots and polished banisters. But those are just dreams. For now, your life belongs to the house. Your dreams are stored like old linens, folded away, tucked into the corners of your mind. You lie in bed, the blanket pulled up, the lamp turned low. Someone sneezes in the hall, a floorboard creaks above, and in the distance a bell rings, faint, persistent, calling. It's a Thursday, which is important because Thursdays are often for guests, and guests mean more work. You know something's different the moment you step into the hallway. The air feels tense. The cook is already shouting about pheasants. The housekeeper is inspecting the stair rail with a white glove, never a good sign. The footmen have been brushing the rugs all morning. The front steps have been scrubbed with soapy water, and the door brass gleams like it was minted yesterday. Someone important is coming. You're not told who. You're not told why. You're just told to polish faster, dust harder, stand straighter, because guests must never see the seams. They must see only elegance, silence, perfection. No soot, no smudges, no signs of the dozens of people who work behind the scenes to make everything shimmer. So you work harder. You lay a fire in the guest room. You fluff the pillows. You tuck the bed sheets so tight the corners could cut glass. You repolish the banister, even though it's been polished twice already this week. You arrange fresh flowers in the drawing room. The flowers are brought in by the gardener's boy. You take them without a word. He's already running to fetch more. The clock strikes 10. The carriage arrives. 2 horses. Glossy. Decorated harnesses. A footman, someone else's footman, steps down and opens the door. And out comes the guest. A woman. You don't recognize her. but the lady of the house rushes to greet her at the door herself, which tells you everything you need to know. This guest matters. She wears gloves that cost more than your monthly wages. Her hat has plumes that seem to defy gravity. Her shoes click on the stone floor like punctuation. You lower your head as she passes. Then you run back inside to prepare the guest's tea. There's a kind of dance that happens when guests arrive. A rush of trays. An extra log on the fire. More sugar cubes because she takes 3. A second teaspoon. Biscuits that are the right kind. You don't know what that means, but the cook does, and you don't question her. If the guest is staying overnight, it's a whole new performance. The guest rooms are already prepared, but now they must be re-prepared. Slippers placed at the foot of the bed. A water jug filled. Fresh towels laid out, warmed if possible. You open the window just a crack. Enough to make the room feel aired out, not cold. Someone lights lavender oil in a saucer. You're not sure why, but it's always done. The guest is shown upstairs. You are not. You return to your place, waiting for the bell. It rings within minutes. She wants hot water. You carry it up in a pitcher, wrapped in a cloth, careful not to spill a drop. You knock softly. The door opens a crack. A gloved hand accepts the pitcher. You bow and back away. You are never invited in. In the servants' hall, there's talk. There's always talk when guests come. The older maid says the visitor is someone the master used to know. Well, no. The kitchen maid says she heard the mistress sighing in her room, and she thinks it was a sad sigh, not an angry one. The footman, who opened the front door, says the lady looked right past him, like he didn't exist. Which is normal, but this time it felt intentional. The gossip swirls like tea leaves. The butler hears it and says nothing. Just clears his throat and checks the decanter levels again. When guests dine, the meal grows longer. There are more courses, fancier names, dishes served under silver domes with great ceremony. You carry the plates back and forth. The lady and the guest talk in whispers. The master says very little. You hear the silverware clink and the fire crackle. You hear laughter, but you don't know what's funny. After dinner, the drawing room fills with voices. The piano is opened. The guest plays a song. Soft, lilting practice. The kind of playing that's meant to impress, but not offend. You stand in the hallway out of sight, listening. Then the guest leaves the piano. Someone opens the French doors to the garden. Even in winter, the garden is pristine. You light lanterns along the walkway. The family walks outside, arm in arm with the guest. You go behind them carefully, lighting more lamps, watching their silhouettes. The guest laughs again. A different kind of laugh. The lady doesn't laugh. The master stares at the stars. You go back inside. In the kitchen, the cook slumps into a chair. The pheasant was overcooked, she says. The sauce was wrong. The kitchen maid says she didn't notice. The scullery maid has fallen asleep again. You brew the evening tea. Carry it upstairs. Place it on the side table in the guest room. You pause for a moment. Everything in the room is perfect. Not just clean. Perfect. And yet you can feel the tension in the air. Like a thread stretched taut, waiting to snap. The guest is brushing her hair in the mirror. She doesn't turn. You place the tray. Step back. She says nothing. You leave. Downstairs, the gossip continues. Quiet now. Hushed. The lady's maid says the mistress cried. The valet says the master hasn't gone to bed yet. The butler pours himself a small brandy, which he rarely does. You sit by the stove. The coals are low. The warmth is faint, but it's enough. The guest will leave tomorrow. Everything will return to normal. But something has shifted. You can feel it. Because in a house like this, everything matters. Every glance. Every plate. Every pause. The guest has gone. The carriage pulled away at 10:30, exactly on schedule, wheels whispering over the gravel. You stood at the window, just long enough to see the plume of her hat bob away. She didn't say goodbye to you. She didn't even look your way. But the tension in the house lingers like smoke after a fire. The mistress has gone to her room. The master hasn't come down yet. The lady's maid hasn't said a word since breakfast. And yet the house continues. Because it must. You scrub the guest room until it smells like lemon oil and boiled linen. The slippers are collected. The sheets stripped. The tray removed. You find only half a biscuit left, broken in two as though the guest changed her mind mid-bite. The flowers have wilted. You throw them out. The butler is quieter than usual today. He checks the wine cellar inventory twice, polishes the silver a third time. Not because it needs polishing, but because idle hands in this house are a luxury no one allows themselves. The cook tries a new recipe, a pudding that uses suet and raisins. She doesn't say why. The scullery maid scrubs the stove with more force than usual. It squeaks under her rag. A tired metallic sound. Life returns to routine. Sort of. The mansion feels heavier, as if the walls know something you don't. You return to the basics. Polishing boots, turning mattresses, laying fires, replacing candles, dusting things that never gather dust, just to be sure. Because that's what life in service is. Certainty in the face of someone else's chaos. If the master falls ill, you lay his dressing gown out. If the lady weeps, you fetch her handkerchief. If the child breaks a vase, you sweep it up before anyone notices. You are not allowed to break. Not in front of anyone. You hold your posture, your silence, your routine like a soldier with a musket. That night after the bell has gone quiet and the lamps have been dimmed, you sit in your attic room and look at the ceiling. It is uneven. A line of cracks curves like a crooked smile above your bed. You count them. Again. There are 7. Always 7. You wonder if you'll still be here next year. You wonder if the scullery maid will become a kitchen maid. If the footman will leave and become a porter in a hotel. If the cook will retire. If the master will die. You wonder if any of it will matter. And still the days come. The hours stack. The mansion breathes. And you rise again and again to keep it breathing. The clocks tick through the silence. One in every hallway. Each wound by hand. You know their rhythms. You know which one ticks louder, which one runs slow, which one always chimes a second too soon. They are like the heartbeats of the house. You feel them in your bones. And sometimes, just sometimes, when you pass by one in the dead of night, you wonder, if they stopped ticking, would time stop too? Would the house fall silent? Would everything freeze in place? Would you finally be able to rest? But no. The clocks tick on. The bells ring. The kitchen fills with steam. The mistress descends the stairs at the same hour every day. The master reads his paper, frowning in the same chair. The children grow older. But you remain. Because the house needs you. Not for who you are, but for what you do. You are the silent footstep, the steady hand, the tea poured just right, the sheet folded just so, the match struck at dawn, the ghost in the corridor, the shadow in the staircase mirror. You are the soul of the house, and even if they never speak your name, even if no one remembers your face, you will have existed here, in every polished doorknob, in every folded napkin, in every faint smell of coal and lavender, in every flicker of the lamps you lit. The mansion stands because you moved through it. Invisible, steady, silent. The clock chimes midnight. Another day ends, and tomorrow it begins again.